Hi guys, Fernandes Limbo on the grid. John, we might as well get right to kind of the news of the last couple of days. We've mentioned it before, House Bill 7029. Really, the way it affects athletics around the area is athletes will be able to go whatever school they want to. Apparently, what I'm just reading here, it passed the Senate, it passed the House, now it goes before Rick Scott to vote on. And we talked about it before. I mean, this bill is 168 pages. They just cram everything in here. You've talked to some local coaches. I have. Mixed reaction, or some coaches still kind of against this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of strange. You're allowed to kind of jump schools for sports in a sense, and you can play. I mean, you can't play the same sport at a different school in the same year.
Right.
But you can play this bill. You'll be allowed to play football here and basketball here and baseball here. And I was thinking about this today. Can you imagine? Let's go back to the '90s. Peter Warwick for Southeast returns that punt, one of the most legendary plays in the history of this area for football. Can you imagine if, like, 2 months later, he's playing basketball for Manatee? I mean, wouldn't that be strange? So that's kind of where we're going with this.
Is it to the advantage of the student? Is it basically giving him free choice? But it looks like to me it could be just opening up the door for a Pandora's box of great teams focused in one area.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot of athletic-based jumping. Let's be honest. It's not going to be all education. But that's the problem. I mean, there are some kids who do switch schools for educational purposes.
Right.
And unfortunately, when something like this happens, those kids kind of get lumped in with everybody else. So, I'm sure Rick Scott's going to sign it. I'm sure it's going to go through.
Sure,
I think July 1st it would be implemented, if that's correct.
Right.
So I'm curious to see what's going to happen. It's going to be crazy. I mean, it might erode some of the rivalries too, because no longer are you, I'm a Venice Indian, I'm a Sarasota Sailor, I'm a Ram, I'm a Hurricane. It's going to be, well, I'm a Hurricane in the fall, and then in the winter I might be a Ram. And
right, whatever works for me, whatever kind of
pretty much
behooves me.
Yep.
I mean, what gets me is that you'll be able to, in the middle of a week or just in the middle of the season, be able to go to another team, learn the playbook, and theoretically play that Friday.
Yeah, well, you can't play the same sport.
Right, the same sport.
Right, so you can't play, right, but you can play a different sport right. So
that's unbelievable.
It's going to be, I'm curious what's going to happen.
This is the most progressive, if you want to use that word, progressive bill in the state, among all the states. So
I think so, in terms of high school
We'll
sports.
see what Rick Scott does going forward. But a little bit locally, just a couple of things you worked on. Softball,
Yes.
Lakewood Ranch, Braden River was undefeated. Gave him first loss of the season, 10-6. Maddie LaCastro had 2 home runs.
Yep.
What about that game? What about that rivalry?
Yeah, it was fun. A lot of people were there last night. Braden River came in. They were ranked 10th in 7A, Ranch 4th in 8A. Melissa Dowling, of Braden River's head coach, had a great career at Lakewood Ranch.
Right.
It was all Braden River. They were up 5-3 going to the 5th. A 2-out, 6-run rally for the Mustangs. A couple of errors, a couple of seeing eye singles put it together. But both teams are good. I think they'll both go pretty far in their classification. So
this Maddie LaCastro, 2 home runs.
Yeah.
I cover softball. We all do. You don't see a lot of home runs. Is she just a powerful?
Yeah, and the first one she pulled it, gets a shot to the left. And the second one was, as I said in the story, opposite field shot to right center. So she has power, pull and go the opposite way.
Right.
And, they just put the ball in play. And that's what the coach, Maggie Feig, said. So we just want to put the ball in play, put pressure on the defense. And Braden River played some great defense early on. They really did. And then in that 5th inning, things kind of snowballed and unraveled. So, but definitely a good game. A lot of people there, as I said, and lived up to the rivalry.
Is she being pursued by anybody? I mean, is she
only a sophomore?
Only a sophomore.
So, we'll
okay.
see.
Plenty of time for her to hit a lot more home runs.
Yeah.
You also did a story, mentioning you again.
Yes.
Miriam Schmoll, softball pitcher, come back from an ACL
Bayshore,
tear. Bayshore, 2015. Just talk about your story. It was a great story. Just talk about her inspiration that she gets.
Yeah, well, she's a great kid. I remember talking to her when she was a freshman, when she helped Bayshore reach the Final Four. And I remember we were talking once, and she quoted an African proverb.
Really?
And I was like, I'm like, wow, interesting.
You do a double take?
Well, no, I mean, you don't see too many high school athletes quote,
Usually they're quoting Britney Spears or something.
Right, yeah. So she's a really heady kid, really smart kid, and it sounds like she even said in the story, she really loves softball even more now because she lost it for a year.
Right.
And, it's interesting. She was really stubborn. She convinced her parents she was fine. The day she got hurt, she ran a mile. Then a week later, she went for the MRI, and the ligament was pretty much dissolved. So, yeah, she's pitching really well. And if she gets hot, she can hit too. So if she keeps pitching and hitting like she is, Bayshore has a shot to really make some noise in 5A.
You know, just off the subject a little bit, I did a story a few years ago where I talked to a couple of physicians in town. It seemed like a lot of female athletes, either with the way they jump or they land playing, they get a lot of ACL tears, a lot more than their male counterparts.
Interesting about this, they're not sure how it happened. As I mentioned in the story, maybe she might have over-rotated her hips on that pitch.
Right.
But the reason she did a year of physical therapy, and the reason she did a full year was ligament tears, from what she told me, don't often happen to softball pitchers, so they weren't clear how long it would take for her to recuperate. You know, it happened. Football players see a lot of it.
Sure.
We don't see a lot of softball players. That's why she went for the whole year of therapy, because she wasn't sure. They weren't sure how long this would take.
Right.
But she has a brace in her left knee, but the numbers she's putting up, it's like she never got hurt.
She never got hurt at all.
Right.
Okay.
Bayshore, as Frank Luther said, the Bayshore coach, I'm happy she's here.
Exactly. I'm happy we're talking about it, too.
Right.
This weekend, Sarasota High Spring Slam Tournament, 16 softball teams, 3 from the area, Braden River, Palmetto, host Sarasota Friday, Saturday.
Right.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Great softball.
Yeah, a lot of softball at the Miss Sarasota softball complex. A lot of good softball being played. And Palmetto won it last season.
Right.
So, you know, we'll see how it shakes out this year. You know, it's a good kind of precursor for these teams for the postseason and the state tournament and such. But
Have you seen Sarasota? Sarasota is the host.
Right.
Is there a favorite going into this thing?
hard to tell. I mean, there's a lot of teams there we haven't seen. I mean, 3 local teams and a lot of teams from out of the area. So, you know, I'm sure after the first day you might get a better gauge on who's going to finish first.
A lot of good softball in this area, huh?
Yeah, it's fun.
I mean, it's great facilities.
Yeah.
I mean, other parts of the country I've been to, not as
and you got a lot of travel teams too. That's the big thing. A lot of these girls play year round. So yeah, but a lot of good softball, a lot of good hitting. You know, when I was in Pennsylvania, Indiana, it was all 1-0, 2-1 softball games. Last night, 10-6. You know, we see a lot of good, a lot of power, a lot of gap-to-gap power with these softball teams. So yeah, some pretty fun softball.
And I think there's a lot of hitting coaches in the area, not just baseball coaches, but softball coaches, which really get their swing on the plane that they should. Mentioned the Sarasota High Slam. What do we got coming up next week?
Next week is the tradition-rich Sarasota Baseball Classic. Got 7 local teams in that, 16 overall. We got Sarasota, obviously. We got Braden River, Manatee, Riverview, Cardinal Mooney, Lakewood Ranch, and Venice. Venice won it last year. Also a team from Huntsville, Alabama, as well as James Madison in Virginia. So yeah, again, I mean, if you like baseball, high school baseball, that's a place to be. 4 different sites around Sarasota County. So, you know, if you're a baseball fan, definitely check out the Baseball Classic. It's been, I think it's the 31st year.
Yeah, it's one of the premier, I think, events in the entire state, and pretty good bragging rights for the local schools.
And not to blow smoke, but it's so well run.
It is.
You know, I've covered that where it's been rainouts after rainouts, and they still manage to get things done. And you know, I mean, teams wouldn't be coming from Jacksonville and Miami and Virginia and Alabama if it wasn't a well-run tournament. So, you know, definitely they do things the right way. It's good baseball, and again, you know, if you do well in that tournament, it might springboard you to a pretty special postseason.
Exactly, and you're taking on that tough competition that you want to.
And you're getting accustomed to playing 3 days in a row, which we do in districts. So.
Well, what else? What else we got coming up?
Well,
besides that,
a week from Monday, with next week, the 28th, we got tennis. District tennis getting rolling, and that pretty much ushers in the spring postseason. So, and then I can't believe I'm saying this, in about a month, we have the first allowable practice for spring football.
Spring football.
April 25th is the first allowable non-contact practice. So.
And I can't tell you how many people are saying, when does football start?
Well, April 25th.
And that's it. So going forward, we'll be talking about that here on the Grid. We can start talking about On the Grid again.
Exactly.
As it is.
Exactly.
So next week, we'll look at the baseball and tennis and a whole bunch of other things.
You got it.
All right. So for John Lembo, I'm Doug Fernandez, and we'll see you next week on the Grid.